Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on how to go global, the 5 essential steps for success. My name is Arvind Raj. I'm the principal consultant at Indigo Consulting. We have an exciting array of speakers here today, starting with Ned Nerungadi, who's the former Regional Director for Global Expansion at the Business Development Bank of Canada. We have Bart Hergarden, a cross-border consultant from the Netherlands, who's going to be joining us all the way from Europe. And last but not the least, we have my colleague, Yogi Kalavallapalli, who is going to be speaking about funding for global expansion. The agenda for today is, I'll just go through the agenda in brief. We're going to be starting with an introduction to Indigo. We move from there to the 5-step approach to getting into global markets. We're then going to look at an overview of several markets, starting with Europe, going into the Middle East and Asia, and also looking at a snapshot of the United States. And we will conclude with what are the funding options available for you as a business as you begin or continue your journey to go global. To introduce Indigo Consulting to you, Indigo Consulting was founded by Dr. Besant Raj, who happens to be my father, way back in 1979. Dr. Raj was a doctorate in business administration from the Harvard Business School, a renowned management consultant in India, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, and was also the co-founder of the Institute of Chartered Financial Analysts of India. And today, the ICFAI, as it is known, is one of India's largest educational institutions. He has been a management consultant to large corporates and government entities since 1979, and the company has clients across India, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. To introduce myself, I am an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. I was a former banker with American Express Bank and with the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, now known as HSBC. And I have been a management consultant with Besant Raj Consultants, the original name of our company, since 1994. We also founded Indigo Marketing Solutions, the advertising arm of our company, in 1994 in India. And this company caters to large Fortune 500 clients like Unilever, PepsiCo, Nestle, Johnson & Johnson, and Reckitt Benckiser, amongst many others. With regard to Indigo Consulting started cross-border consulting services for Canadian companies that wanted to go to India way back in 2008. And we have been roster consultants with the Business Development Bank of Canada, working with the BDC's clients across Ontario, Quebec, BC, and Alberta over the last 10 years. And it's been a very, very interesting experience working with the BDC over these years. We work with consultants of our own in Canada and India, and a network of associates in the United States, in Europe, and the Middle East. The world of opportunities beyond Canadian borders. Why should companies go global? Well, there are several reasons I could list out to you. One, which is the most obvious, would be to mitigate risk. Rather than putting all your eggs in one basket, you start looking at different baskets where you could offer your products and services. You diversify your customer base, you diversify your market, access new revenue streams, and in several cases, you have the first mover advantage in certain markets. If you're looking at outsourcing production, you could be tapping into economies of scale with a country that has lower labor costs and potentially has better technology. And of course, there's always the plus of increasing brand recognition from a national scale to a global scale. So how does Indigo Consulting help you go global? We follow a time-tested 5-step approach. In step 1, we do an organization review and readiness assessment. We ask you, as the owner of your company, are you really ready to go global? Do you have the management bandwidth to handle going global? Do you have the financial resources? If you're selling a product, do you have the production capacity? If you're selling a service, are you ready to go into that market? Have you translated your product into those languages? There are many questions that you need to ask yourself in that first stage where we do an internal readiness assessment. Once we understand that the organization is ready to go forward, we go to the next stage. We conduct a detailed market study for our client's product or services in the target market. What that means is we go into great detail in the target market. We identify who the local players are, any international players that might already be in the field. What's the industry looking like? Is the industry growing? Has it plateaued or is it declining? What are the regular patterns of trade in the industry? What are the practices that are being followed in that country? What are the barriers to entry? Are there any differences in the way trade is carried out, let's say in the eastern part of the country versus the west? So we look at different elements, and while we study the market, we try to identify opportunities that could potentially exist for our clients. Don't forget, during the organization review and readiness assessment in step 1, we study our clients' products and services in great detail to see where the fit could potentially be. Once we complete this stage, we submit a report to our clients. And if the client feels that they'd like to go forward in the target market in that particular country, we then start working on a market entry strategy. Should the organization find a distributor for their products? Should they find a local partner to manufacture a product for that market? Should they be looking at a joint venture? What exactly should their mode of entry be? And to a great extent, a lot of this depends on your company's size, your bandwidth, your resources, and therefore there is no one size fits all. Each of you is a unique client, and we look at you from that perspective as to what is it that would be the ideal solution for your company's product or services. Once we've zeroed in on a market entry strategy, we work with our clients in stage 4, where we start identifying potential partners for you in that market and how we should shortlist these clients. Now, what I mean by shortlist is we usually try and ensure that you and your partners are similar in size, share the same corporate values, are equally passionate about succeeding in terms of selling that product or service in the market, have the same ideals and goals, and therefore should hopefully be the right fit for both sides, where it's a win-win situation at the end of the day. Once you have selected a partner or partners, for example, you may have distributors, a different distributor for the north, for the south, east, and west. Well, you've got 4 partners in that place. Once you have selected your partners, we then go to stage 5, the stage of commencement and continuity. Do you need legal and tax consulting? Do you need boots on the ground? Do you want to hire a couple of employees to be placed at a virtual office in that target market? All these questions need to be ironed out at that point of time. And once you've got that ironed out, you actually start doing business with that country. I'm now going to invite our fellow associate, Bart Hergarden from the Netherlands, to give you some insights on Opportunity Europe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Erwin, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be part of today's online seminar from the Netherlands. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Bart Hergaarde. I run my own consultancy business based out of the Netherlands. I have a total of 14 years experience in consulting and hands-on import and export trading business between the Netherlands, India, where I lived for 5 years in total, and also other parts of the world. Regarding the relationship between Canada and the EU in general, and looking at the EU market in general from Canada, let me share some facts and figures for those of you who might not be that familiar yet. First of all, the European Economic Zone, the EU zone, is the second largest export destination for Canadian businesses, for the Canadian economy, after the US, obviously. And it is the destination for 8% last year, more than 8% of Canada's goods export, and more than 16% of Canada's services export. So it makes it a very, very significant trading partner, or let's say export destination already since a couple of years. The figures I just mentioned were from 2019. However, what has been the most, let's say, relevant and interesting development over the past couple of years is that in 2016, the CETA agreement, the CETA bilateral trade agreement, was signed between the EU member states and Canada. And the CETA trade agreement has the aim, or is aimed at removing as many hurdles to promote bilateral trade between both countries. For example, 98% of HS codes, 98% of goods and services have been exempt from any import duties. So, except for a few critical or very specific categories, exporting from Canada to the EU is without any fiscal barriers, first of all. Second of all, the documentation requirement has been simplified even more and has been made as efficient and compact as possible to enter, to export goods and to get them into the EU zone. Canadian companies specifically, compared to other non-EU trading partners, get preferential access to the European market and are treated as equal entities, or as equal, let's say, parties in almost all of the sectors and industries. Additionally, the CETA also covers issues like protection of intellectual property, and the recognition of tech standards, technical standards of Canada by the EU in order to prevent any double certification, double testing, etc., etc. So all these aspects have been covered under the CETA agreement, which makes it, since end 2016, very easy to take the first steps from Canada to the EU, or to grow business further in case companies are already active and would like to increase their footprint in the EU and increase the revenue share from their export business from Europe. This has been made very, very, very easy and accessible since a couple of years. Finally, I would like to spend 2 or 3 minutes talking to you specifically about the Netherlands as a potential entry point into the European market, and the Netherlands as a market by itself. It's interesting to realize that 50% of all non-European businesses that do business in Europe, they either start in the Netherlands or they even set up a local headquarters to coordinate their activities across the European Economic Zone. The reason why so many businesses choose for the Netherlands is multifold. First of all, the largest port in Europe is Rotterdam, which is at the heart of the, let's say, Western European geographical map. Second of all, the Netherlands has a very beneficial fiscal climate. For example, repatriating profits back to the home country is much more beneficial in the Netherlands compared to most other EU member states. Also, the Netherlands is an economy with the size half of Canada's. However, the geographical area, the size of the Netherlands, is only 200 by 300 kilometers. So it's a very, very compact, very small market with a purchasing power parity, with an economic output per capita of $57,000, which makes it, along with the other Scandinavian, German, Western European markets, on par with Canada's economic output of roughly $50,000. So you have a whole bunch of countries, especially I'm talking now about the northwest, let's say, part of Europe, which are economically on par with, and where the Netherlands is at the heart, logistically, location-wise, and where it is a very accessible and compact testing ground from where to evaluate the business model or the product or the response, and from where to further expand deeper into the European market, where cultural differences are also bigger. Language barriers and culture are very different in France, Italy, Germany, and in the Netherlands, the issues with language are lowest across the whole of the European Union. The general knowledge of English, the general command of the English language is there across the population, which makes it easier as a starting ground compared to Germany or France, where you really have to speak the local language, or your packaging has to be fully in the local language. So these are just a couple of reasons why the Netherlands is a market which is preferred by many non-European businesses as a starting point, from where to evaluate, test, fine-tune, and then grow from there. Back to you, Erwin, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you or hearing from you, or even doing business with you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart, for those great insights on Europe. The next country we'd like to look at for today is the United States, our southern neighbor. Many of you might know that Canada is sometimes called the noodle country because 90% of our population lives within 100 miles of the US border. It's no surprise that the US is Canada's largest trading partner, with 73% of our exports going into the United States. Our largest export into the US is agricultural products at $23 billion, followed closely by snack food, not closely, but followed by snack food products at $4.5 billion, red meat at $2.3 billion, and we have a range of other products also going in. The Canada-US-Mexico agreement gives us distinct advantages that European countries and Asia do not enjoy, and therefore the US will always continue to be a great market for Canadian companies. I'd like to share a very fun map of the United States with you, which compares the GDP of different countries with the GDP of different states. And if you have a look at the map that I'm showing you, and if you look at Texas in the south, you can see that the GDP of Texas at $1.78 trillion is more than that of Canada at $1.73 trillion. That kind of shows you the size of the US. For example, the largest state by GDP in the US, California, at $2.97 trillion, is larger than the economy of the United Kingdom at $2.81 trillion. And for Ontarians, if you look at the state of New York, you can see that the state of New York has GDP of $1.7 trillion, which again is almost the equivalent of Canada, to that of, and when you compare that to the GDP of South Korea, again, the state of New York is larger. Moving on from the United States to Asia and in specific India, why should Canadian companies look at India as a potential target market? Well, for those of you that are not very familiar with Asia and in specific India, India is the world's 5th largest economy today in nominal terms and the 3rd largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity. India has a middle class of 400 million people, and that's more than the population of all of the United States. India has one of the world's largest English-speaking populations, and India happens to be a Commonwealth country. Therefore, business practices across Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and India are very, very similar. India also has a tremendous amount of internet penetration and mobile phone usage. India has 850 million mobile phone users today, out of which 500 million of those phones are smartphones. There is an opportunity, therefore, for clients who have products and services that they can sell to the technology industry. With regard to sectoral opportunities, I would suggest you look at what the federal government has to say about different sectors that could be great opportunities that entrepreneurs can tap into in India. You can have a look at the list that's available on screen. And do remember that India is the 9th largest destination for Canada's exports and a growing market as well. Moving on from India to the Middle East, first of all, the average GDP growth rate in the Middle East has been about 5%, much higher than that of G7 countries at 2.7%, and therefore showing you that there's an opportunity there as well. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are 2 of Canada's largest export markets. Canada's top exports to the UAE include agricultural produce, machinery, vehicles and equipment. Again, in the case of Saudi Arabia, Canada's top exports include machinery, vehicles and equipment, chemical products, and a range of other products as well. A lack of homegrown crops in the region, the region being a desert to a large extent, gives an opportunity to the agricultural industry to tap into those markets. With regard to other parts of the Middle East, Canadian entrepreneurs should note that Canada has a free trade agreement with Israel and with Jordan. So please do have a look at those markets. They certainly can be markets of size and scale. Canada also has foreign investment promotion and protection agreements with Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, and Lebanon. I'm now going to hand over the presentation to my colleague, Ned Nedungadi, former regional director of the BDC, to talk to you more about why you should use the assistance of experts in your endeavor to go global. Thank you.
I am Murli Nedungadi, also known as Ned. You can call me Murli or you can call me Ned, as long as you call me. I used to be the regional director at the Business Development Bank of Canada and also a senior advisor at the Ministry of International Trade in Ontario. In these positions, I have been very privileged to help many Canadian companies establish and diversify and grow their businesses in India, in Oman, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Singapore, Malaysia, to name a few. As you well know, many of these markets are booming. We have been largely dependent on the US economy for many, many years, largely due to the proximity of the US to Canada, and which is fine. But I think it is time that Canadian companies look overseas if they want to grow their businesses, expand, and diversify. We have the wherewithal in Canada. We have excellent resources, knowledge base in agriculture, petrochemical, oil and gas, construction, to name a few. If you were to take a company from here, from Canada, into any of these markets, it's important that these companies understand the marketplace, do the proper research, get into the market, identify a proper agent or a distributor, or establish their own entity, or go into a joint venture. All too often, Canadian companies go into such markets without adequate preparation and fail. In my previous positions, as I said, I have taken many, many Canadian companies into these markets. India, as an example, is a growing economy, has been for several years, almost 2 decades now. Of 1.3 billion people, almost 30+ percentage of people are under the age of 30, which means you are looking at a market of substantial expendable and disposable income at their hand, looking for areas and avenues to spend on. A very supportive government looking at increasing and bettering the infrastructure in the country, establishing new products, establishing new revenue streams of different sorts. The Canadian company who were to get into such markets would find themselves in a highly beneficial position. It's the same thing if you look at Dubai, or Abu Dhabi, or Oman, and Saudi Arabia, among the GCC countries in the Middle East. No doubt the pandemic has pushed things back a little bit. Once the pandemic is over and the market settles, it will depend on the person or the company who gets into the market the earliest. In other words, the first mover advantage is key in every one of these situations. So how would you go about finding a market? Do you have the market intelligence to do it? Have you done a proper research? These are the areas that we can help you with. I have worked extensively with Indigo marketing in many, many of my projects. What we do is to identify a market, identify the opportunities, the strengths, the weaknesses, the pros and the cons, and determine the mode of entry into this particular market. Do we get in through an agent? Should we be looking for a distributor? What are the key differences? Do we really need to be in that market at all? Or should we go in all by ourselves and just be an importer? Or should we set up a joint venture? Now, I have helped companies in all these situations. And one of the things which is key is the intelligence beforehand in order to succeed. I can tell you at least one company from Canada who, a highly successful, well-known entity here, decided to go on their own into the Indian market many years ago. They went in, they identified an agent through their own contacts, which was fine, and everything was going very smoothly. Then the owners of the company began to feel that there was something not quite right. One of the reasons, in fact, was they had never been into the market themselves. When I was brought into this project, we did an extensive market research, and one of the first things we identified was the fact that the company was only tapping into 20% of their potential. Why was that? In deeper investigation, we found that the agent had established their own company under the name of the parent company in Canada without their knowledge and were supplying it and subcontracting the products. To cut a long story short, we went into the market, we untied the ties with the agent, established new distributors, met the clients, and I'm very happy to say that this company is doing extremely well in India and now in the Middle East as well. There are various avenues in which you, as an entrepreneur, can really get into these markets and be successful. There are government entities like the Business Development Bank of Canada. There is the Ministry of International Trade. There are both the government, federal, as well as the provincial government and Crown Corps, which will be able to help you, like EDC, for example, and of course your own banks. And in addition to all of that, you need to understand that you must look for good assistance and help with knowledgeable people who have the market intelligence, who know where to look and get you into the market and established in a proper manner. It is really, really important to know what to do when going into a new market, but it's imperative to know what not to do going into the market. Do contact us, and we looking forward to helping you in the future.
Thank you, Ned, for your profound insights. Hello, everyone. My name is Yogi Kalvalapalli, and I'm a management consultant with Indigo. As we near the end of the presentation, I would like to touch upon something that concerns a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking to expand overseas, which is money. At Indigo, we are often asked by our clients, isn't global market entry an expensive affair? While that may be true to a certain extent, it need not be as expensive because there are multiple funding avenues available for Canadian entrepreneurs to take advantage of. The most prominent of which is the Can Export program. Can Export is a federal grant program administered by the Government of Canada to enable small and medium enterprises to expand into foreign markets. It is open to all sectors and industries, and it typically funds projects ranging from $20,000 to $100,000. About 75% of the program's expenses are covered by the government. What this means is if you are able to secure a $20,000 grant, the government would reimburse you $15,000 upon submission of your receipts. A lot of companies, when they are typically entering a foreign market, engage consultants to conduct market intelligence or to conduct market studies to advise them better and to help them make better business decisions. The Can Export program supports that. It also supports companies with legal and tax consulting or IP protection in foreign markets. It also enables you to cover expenses related to marketing tools such as digital marketing or translation services if required. Can Export also supports business travel and trade shows. However, that's currently on hold because of COVID. So who is eligible for Can Export funding? As you would have guessed, it is for-profit companies based in Canada and who are registered with the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, as we call it here. The companies should not have more than 500 full-time employees, and the revenues should range from $100,000 all the way up to $100 million. Only then you are eligible for Can Export funding, and please bear in mind, you have to fulfill all the criteria that are listed on the slide. Next up, we have the BDC and the EDC, Business Development Bank of Canada and Export Development Canada, that typically help entrepreneurs with working capital needs. The BDC has various loan programs for market expansion or for IP protection, intellectual property protection, or to undertake certain marketing activities. EDC, on the other hand, provides trade credit insurance, whereby it reimburses up to 90% of account receivables in case of a default. EDC also has an export guarantee program where they work with your financial institution to help you get additional access to your capital by the way of guaranteeing your payments on your behalf. So these are two very powerful financial tools that small and medium enterprises could leverage on when they are looking at exporting to foreign markets. We also have certain Provinces that also have some programs for their businesses based in their province, like for example, as you can see on the slide, Ontario and Quebec. So these are also certain funding resources that provinces, companies could access from those provinces. Due to the paucity of time, we are unable to discuss in greater detail. However, if you are interested in any particular program or would you like to know more, please feel free to get in touch with us. To wrap up the presentation, I would hand over to one of our valuable clients, Mr. Jim Christian, followed by Irwin, who will conclude with closing remarks. Over to you, Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim Christian. I'm the founder and president of Cornerstone Building and Property Services based in Mississauga. I founded the company a little over 11 years ago. That's when I met Erwin Raj of Indigo Consulting. Indigo helped us with our original branding and marketing strategies and general business strategies as we started to take off. They assisted and have been working with us with all of our marketing needs since then, but have played a role in some strategic planning and some strategic sourcing for vendors. When we were looking at an opportunity in the UK, we relied on Indigo to assist in the development of the proposal. Indigo Consulting played a major role in helping us getting started with all that needed to be done when we opened in the US. As we continued to grow, Indigo helped us find global partners. In particular, one partner they found for us was a drafting architectural firm in India that was able to do drawings at a very competitive pricing and speed up the level of service that we could offer our clients. As we move forward, we're working with Indigo for strategic planning on other global vendors, but also now starting to look at the India and Asia markets to see if there's opportunities there for us to take our services to those markets. Erwin Raj and his team at Indigo Consulting have been a great partner for us, and we'll continue to work with them in the future. If you're looking to expand globally and need a partner to walk that journey with you, you can count on Indigo to help you.
Let me just start off with the questions. I see a couple of questions coming in. The first question I see is, are there any sectors or industries that Indigo specializes in? Well, that's a great question, and to answer that, I'd like to state that when we started Indigo Consulting, we actually started off with the objective of focusing on the consumer product sector. And when we started working with the Business Development Bank of Canada and started working with Ned Nerungadi in specific, we were focusing on that sector initially. Over the years, however, we have expanded our entire range of services to include engineering products, things like plastics, other types of food ingredient products, and internet-based products as well as part of our portfolio. So to answer that question in brief, if there is a specific product that one is looking for, do let us know what it is that you have, and then we can explore the possibilities of being able to assist you. I see a question coming in from somebody in India. How can you assist a company from India set base in Canada to help sell their products there? Well, that's a nice question. Thank you for sending that question. We do work with many companies already from India who are looking at either getting into Canada or who are looking at entering Canada with the objective of later on getting a step into the United States. And therefore, we have been working with companies from India, I would say, the last 15 years, again, from different sectors, consumer products, technology, software products, and again, we've got a couple of clients who are from the engineering sector as well. How can the BDC help companies in going global? How does the BDC work? And what was the method you followed to help clients go global?
Well, the way the BDC helped at that time when I was with them was in really taking the company from point A to point Z, so to speak, meaning it would do everything, including market research and analysis. We would identify the company or the country that they want to go to the client. Once we established that, we would actually set up meetings with potential joint venture partners or agents or distributors. We would accompany the client into the market, translate when needed, sit in on the meetings. In other words, we would really walk the entire length from beginning to end in the company's journey into setting up their own, establish their own entity in the foreign market that they want to. In many instances, this led to other projects as well, and we would really walk them through different areas. In other words, you could literally take a company into India and then they decide to move forward to the Middle East or wherever else. The other part of it was the consulting fee itself was actually, it could be funded by the BDC in addition to the client's own bank. Now, as to whether these facilities now exist in BDC, I am not sure because I don't believe that they do the extensive point-to-point functioning with the client into helping them going into foreign markets. This is something that we would do here at Indigo, for example, with our own resources. But the BDC, that's the way they used to. But the BDC still does things like funding, financing for the consulting programs, financing for the operations, and so on.
I see a question from Andrew Yoshioka. Andrew, your question is the Can Export program retroactive? And the answer for that, Andrew, is no, it is not retroactive. Again, just to add a little bit to what Yogi has to say, what Yogi had told you about the Can Export program, we assist our clients with preparing the Can Export applications. So when they decide to go into foreign markets, we work with them on preparing the application as well. Once we've understood the objectives of the client, the target markets they are looking for, and you can actually target more than one market at a time. So you might say that I'm trying to enter the United States and I'm also looking at entry into, let's say, the Netherlands. But the most important aspect here, Andrew, is the fact that you are only eligible to start spending money after you get approval from the federal government and they actually give you a budget that you can spend with. Until then, you need to keep all spends on hold, and therefore it is not retroactive. I have another interesting question from somebody who's asking us, if a project is already underway, is it too late to enroll? If a project is underway, again, to answer that question, based on the question that Andrew had, anything that you've spent till now will not be considered by Can Export. It is only what you're doing in the future and the spends that you have in the future that will be considered for the Can Export program. Ned, I have another question for you. And the question is, just one moment. The question is, how has the pandemic impacted the Middle East?
That's a very interesting question because the pandemic, as you know, has impacted almost every country in the world, without question. The Middle East, in fact, has been impacted quite heavily, largely because of many projects, many very huge, large projects which were supposed to happen in the Middle East. And I speak generally for the GCC, for example, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries have been put on hold. The 2020 which was to happen in Dubai, the FIFA thing that was supposed to happen in Qatar, to mention a couple, they're all been put on hold. Now, these are huge projects. Similarly, because Dubai, for example, relies a lot on tourism, that has been impacted. Now, that is the universal truth as we know it at this point. However, the good news is eventually the pandemic has to come to an end. So my point is, when the pandemic does come to an end, everything has to be restarted in the Middle East. And therefore, this actually presents a great opportunity for Canadian companies who are not already there to really make their presence known. Take advantage, the first mover advantage is absolutely key in any of these situations. You know, it's often said that wars and famines make the millionaires, but so to speak. But quite seriously, this could actually present great opportunities for Canadian companies to really tap into these markets. They would have to start now because this is the time when things can be set up with relatively less competition. And once that is done, they can take it forward. And we'd be very happy to help them in this venture.
Do you have consultants in other parts of Europe besides the Netherlands? I am looking in particular at the UK, Germany, or France. To answer your question, yes, we do. We have consultants for the UK and for Germany. And our consultancy associate in Germany works with a team of their own consultants, both for Germany and for Eastern Europe.
If I could briefly add to that, when it comes to the Benelux area, the UK and Scandinavian territories, for those markets, I work regularly with other, let's say, local partners and consultants as well. So that would not be an issue at all. You're welcome.
Ned, I have another question for you, which is, have any of your Canadian clients started any type of manufacturing in India to augment their supply chains? Do you have any, without naming a client, could you just tell us an example of someone that might have done, has a manufacturing operation there?
Yes, indeed. I have personally taken at least, I think there are 4 companies that come to mind who have actually established their manufacturing operations in India. 2 of them are from Ontario, one is from Alberta, and the other one from BC. And subsequently one from Quebec as well. But the fact is, all of these companies started smalls. 2 of them went to joint ventures, and I think the other 2 set up on their own. And I'm glad to say that they are doing quite well. And largely in the construction industry, and some of them in the earth moving forklifts kind of in that area.
This is a very specific question again, Ned, so I'm going to send it to you.
Yeah.
How easy is it to do business in Dubai? And I know you've lived in Dubai for many years, and we've had an office there for 3 years as well. But I'd like you to take a shot at answering that. To extend on that question, it's how easy is it to do business in Dubai? Can you find reliable business partners in the Middle East? I have heard some horror stories. So yeah. I pass it on to you.
Well, I would say that horror stories are part of life, regardless of whether it is Dubai or whether it is Canada. Once again, it brings back to the same thing. How easy is it to do business in Dubai? I would say that it's easier to do business today than it was 30 years ago in Dubai. Dubai has always been open for business because they thrive on business only. And tourism is a big part of it, manufacturing in all the different free trade zones. There are various things that are going on in Dubai. So I think doing business in Dubai is no longer a problem. But what the real obstacle would be is to identify the kind of details that the average Canadian company usually will not go into. Which is why, once again, to reiterate my point from the beginning, you need to do your homework, you need to be well prepared. And if you have the kind of information and intelligence that you have when you go into the market, I think doing business in Dubai would be relatively easy. The free zones, for example, is a completely different entity. There are like 35 different free zones in the United Arab Emirates alone, out of which I think some over 24 of them are just in Dubai. And these are relatively easy to set up offices without a local partner. Now, we can get into details at another time or on a one-on-one basis. But to answer your question as to whether it's easy to do business in Dubai, I would say it's relatively easy, provided you do the due intelligence and the due diligence before you go in, identify the right kind of partners that you want to go into bed with, and if you do that, I think you will be successful.
Thank you, Murli. I have another interesting question from the UK, which I think I'll take a shot at. It is, how do you deal with regulatory challenges across markets? This is a very interesting question, and it's a very important part of what we do. To give you an example of something that we're working on right now and a couple of cases from the past, we work with a range of food manufacturers from across the globe. So we work with manufacturers from Hungary, from Poland, from Germany, from Belgium, Turkey, India, and China. Whenever these manufacturers want to enter markets, the Western markets especially, like Canada or the United States, and let's take the US as an example, the first thing you need to do is you need to comply with US FDA regulations. Now, there are certain skills that we have, and there are certain skills where we look at outsourcing those skills to a fellow consultant who's an expert, for example, in US FDA regulations, to make sure that your ingredients are right, to make sure that your nutrition statements are right, to make sure that your calorie counts are right, exactly as how the country would want to have everything presented. This is something that we do with any of our clients. So I gave you an example from the food space. But again, if you take something like technology, we had a client from Canada that was trying to get into India with a technology product. And we first had to make sure that the client and their product complied with Indian government regulations. Because there's no point doing a study for a client and then wasting a lot of money for the client, money and time, and then finding out at the end that this was a non-starter to begin with. So we do a certain amount of due diligence before we start any of our projects to make sure that it's certainly a good investment for the client. One more question, just to add to that, I think someone's asked us the question of, I'd like to export organic products like soaps, hand wash, etc., from India to Canada. So how do I do that? Well, the answer again would be, please remember, it's not as simple as it sounds. There is an entity called Health Canada that is the regulatory authority for food products, anything to do with complex ingredients. If you're not sure, it's always a great idea to reach out to someone like Health Canada or to reach out to a consultant who can assist you. Do not try and bring in shipments of products without knowing if something will be approved or not, because most probably it will not be approved, stopped at the border, and most of the time it will be sent back at a huge expense to the exporter from that country. So you certainly need to ensure when you're trying to bring products into Western markets that you're complying with regulations. I think that brings us to the end of our question answer session for today. Bart, thank you so much for joining us from the Netherlands. I know it's late in the afternoon for you, and I look forward to catching up in the next couple of days. Ned, thank you as always for your insights. It was a pleasure having you here with this webinar. Yogi, it's always always a pleasure to work with you. And to the audience, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciated having all of you here. If any of you has any specific questions to ask us, please do email us at consult@indigo.com. Those of you who know us, just email us at our email IDs if there's something that you'd like to ask us in specific. And we look forward to being of service to all the entrepreneurs that have been a part of this webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.